The courtroom's air turned electric as the prosecutor approached with a small USB. All eyes followed as it was inserted into the court's audio system. With a sharp click, Jay-Z's unmistakable voice filled the room steady, deliberate, and surprisingly clear. "We keep this tight. Optics matter. No room for slip-ups," he said. Then came Diddy's reply. Subdued, hesitant. "I got you. We'll handle it." The gallery froze. Diddy didn't blink, but his clasped hands tightened, fingers turning pale. The judge leaned slightly forward, jurors perked up, and a soft wave of murmurs traveled across the room. This wasn't vague speculation or hearsay. This was concrete. The prosecution stood still, arms folded, no theatrics, just confidence. As the audio played on, Diddy's lawyers whispered rapidly, their expressions turning grave. When it stopped, silence hung thick like fog. Diddy's jaw clenched. He looked at no one. No defense was offered, just the sound of damage echoing louder than any objection. As the audio faded, all attention shifted to Diddy. For a moment, he sat motionless, staring at the table as though frozen in place. His right hand slowly moved to his face, fingers pressed against his temple, trying to maintain composure. But the cracks were showing. His chest rose sharply with each breath, and a single tear formed beneath one eye. His lawyers leaned in, whispering, but he didn't respond. The weight of Jay-Z's voice still echoed in the room. Then, in a hoarse, shaky tone, Diddy murmured, "That's not how it happened." The judge raised an eyebrow. The jury watched intently. One juror tilted her head, studying his every movement. He grabbed a tissue and turned away. Eyes reddened, his mouth trembling. The man who had once embodied control, dominance, and swagger was now unraveling before a public audience. For the first time, it was no longer about the fame. It was about survival inside a courtroom's unforgiving spotlight.
Now things are getting pretty emotional for Cassie Ventura on the stand as she recalls for the jury participating in these sometimes days-long freak-offs, sexual escapades organized by Sean Combs.
The most disturbing part wasn't what Jay-Z said, it was how he said it. The courtroom had expected scandal, but they weren't prepared for the calm, almost corporate nature of his tone. "You manage the fallout. Handle it quietly." Jay-Z said let them talk, but don't let them prove anything. Each word struck like a scalpel, precise, cold, and calculated. The jury leaned forward, hanging on every syllable. One juror even scribbled tone in their notes. Diddy glanced up just once during playback, then looked away as if the sound physically hurt him. Jay-Z's composure stood in contrast to Diddy's unraveling. It was the image of strategy, of control, one man detached, the other drowning. The prosecution ended playback with perfect timing, cutting the clip just as Jay-Z uttered control perception, control outcome. That sentence lingered like smoke. Everyone knew what they just heard. Not gossip, not hearsay. This was orchestration. The courtroom had never heard corruption sound so calm.
Cassie says they used 10 big bottles of baby oil per freak-off, blood and urine all over the walls, and some of the escorts they hired were allegedly from Craigslist.
This wasn't a surprise to the prosecution, it was a setup. For days, they had baited Diddy into denying communication with Jay-Z. He took that bait under oath, swearing he hadn't spoken to Jay-Z about the case or any fallout. Now the audio had done more than prove him wrong, it exposed perjury. The prosecutor walked slowly back to the center of the room, voice steady and deliberate. "Mr. Combs," she began, "would you like to revise your sworn testimony?" The room collectively inhaled. Diddy didn't answer. His attorney quickly objected, but the judge allowed the question. The jury watched him carefully, their expressions unreadable, but undeniably focused. Diddy swallowed hard, avoiding eye contact. It wasn't just about the tape anymore. It was about lying under oath. This was no longer a question of guilt or innocence. It was about credibility. And in that moment, his defense, strategy already fragile, was collapsing under the sheer weight of his own contradictions.
In order to prove racketeering, the prosecution is going to have to show that Mr. Combs and others conspired together to further illegal acts.
As soon as the recording ended, the courtroom reacted like a live wire had been struck. A low gasp rippled across the gallery. A woman in the third row covered her mouth while a journalist dropped his pen. even the court clerk's fingers paused. Briefly above her keyboard, the judge banged the gavel once, calling for silence, but the tension in the air remained thick. One juror's eyes widened, another scratched something urgent into their notebook. This wasn't just celebrity drama, it was a moment of reckoning. For years, Diddy had crafted his public image as untouchable, but here, inside 4 courtroom walls stripped of fanfare and entourage, he was just another man on trial. The prosecutor nodded, slightly satisfied. Diddy sat back in his chair, breathing through his nose, his face pale. The gravity of the moment landed harder than any headline. The court wasn't reacting to a start, they were responding to a story finally cracking open.
They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large-capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims.
Those Bearcats and law enforcement on the other side of those bushes, basically, is that home that is registered to Bad Boy Films, which is part of Bad Boy Entertainment.
Right, gotta keep them there.
Right.
You need locks on the doors.
Okay, this is sounding kind of dangerous now.
The jury trial for Sean Puffy Combs has started and things are not looking good.
Prosecutors were dealt some seriously bad news over the last couple of days. They can't find one of the 3 primary witnesses.
This is massive because we all know that their case hinges on these unnamed victims that they've listed out in their indictment, plus victim number 1, which everyone knows to be Cassie. She will testify, but victim number 3 is where all the action is.
You have a trial subpoena, you are legally obligated to show up and testify, and this is going to piss prosecutors off. So
you're bound.
Now, it's not that they can't do it, and there are going to be other people are going to testify who aren't victims necessarily, aren't alleged victims, but have witnessed the conduct that Diddy's engaged in. Prosecutors presumably have those people too on their witness list. We're going to find out as the case goes on. That is because she told them she had helpful information, and actually, they would have asked her a million questions. She would have stood up under. This woman had something to testify that was going to help prosecutors.
Outside the courtroom, the spin machine fired up instantly. Diddy's PR rep stood before a cluster of microphones, voice tight but rehearsed. That audio was taken out of context. It does not prove wrongdoing, she said. But inside the courthouse, the damage was real and visible. A juror whispered to another. Reporters rushed to upload footage. Diddy remained seated head down, his attorney now holding whispered conversations with a paralegal. Meanwhile, the prosecution quietly observed, knowing public perception was tilting in their favor. Recess was called, and Diddy stood, adjusting his jacket, but the swagger was gone. As he exited the courtroom, cameras flashed. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just walked fast. No entourage, no music, just the sound of footsteps on polished floors. In courtrooms, image doesn't win trials, evidence does. And now with that tape echoing through every corner of public consciousness, the narrative had changed. The empire was under siege, and its king was cornered.
There's really been a flurry of activity, but you got to give credit to Judge Subramanian here. He is really starting to exert control over this case, and he has a schedule that he wants to keep. And part of that schedule is getting this jury selected by Friday. So as you mentioned, he's whittled down the pool. Remember, we started with over 600 potential jurors because this was going to be a hard case to find the 18 people you need, those 12 jurors and those 6 alternates.
As proceedings resumed, the shift in the courtroom was palpable. Jurors sat straighter, more alert, as if a silent decision had begun forming. The defense's attempt to downplay the audio felt hollow. It was a private conversation, Diddy's lawyer argued. But intent had already been established. A crime doesn't need to scream, it only needs to whisper. And this tape had whispered with surgical precision. The judge observed Diddy closely, noting every twitch, every whispered sidebar. In the hallway, legal analysts speculated about perjury, obstruction, and conspiracy. Would Jay-Z now be called to testify, or would his legal team shield him through the Fifth Amendment? Questions mounted. But one thing was clear, this trial was no longer routine. It had become cultural, political, historic. Inside that courtroom, 12 ordinary people were now holding a man's fate in their hands. And after what they heard, the burden of proof didn't feel so distant. For Diddy, the gavel was already echoing.
These names and other celebrities came up at day one of Diddy's sex trafficking trial in Manhattan. Those names were on a list of possible people whose names might come up at some point during what's expected to be a an action-packed 2-month trial.
This morning, a look at the disturbing hotel surveillance video exclusively obtained by CNN of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs amid several assault allegations. The video from March 2016 reportedly shows Combs attacking his then-girlfriend singer Cassie Ventura, throwing her to the ground near an elevator in a Los Angeles hotel, then seen kicking her twice and trying to drag her away. Ventura's attorney responding to the video stating the gut-wrenching video has only further confirmed the disturbing and predatory behavior of Mr. Combs.
As a reminder, Diddy is charged with very serious stuff, including coercing women into what he called freak-offs. Prosecutors have called them days-long coerced sexual performances. His hair, though, has been increasingly getting more gray in the 7 months that he's been locked up, because hair dye is not allowed at the Brooklyn jail where he's staying. As a reminder, Diddy is charged with very serious stuff, including coercing women into what he called freak-offs.
You need locks on the doors.
Okay, this is sounding kind of dangerous now.
Justin, right now he's having 48 hours with Diddy. Where we hanging out and what we doing, we can't really disclose. I had legal guardianship of Usher when, you know, he did his first album. I don't have legal guardianship.
The court fell silent as Jay-Z's voice played, revealing secret talks about hush money. Diddy's face paled, his usual confidence gone. The tape changed everything. Diddy struggled to hold composure, eyes red, voice shaky. The courtroom saw his human idea man overwhelmed by his own words. Jay-Z's calm tone was chilling, showing control and strategy behind the scenes. The jury took keen notes. The prosecution's trap worked perfectly. Diddy had denied contact with Jay's no-caught lying under oath. Gasps and murmurs echoed as everyone realized the gravity of the tape. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Outside, Diddy's team called the audio misleading. Inside, the damage was done, public opinion shifting fast. The jury's mood shifted, doubts grew. The trial had become a battle for truth, and Diddy's fate hung in balance.